Miss Loretta Young? Mr. Bentley's having some people over here at the house tonight, and he'd like to know if you would come. Uh-oh. Miss Young, Mr. Bentley told me to tell you that would be after dinner. That's right. Goodbye. Hello, Miss Irene Dunne? This is Rochester over at Mr. Bentley's house. He'd like to know if you could come over tonight. He told me to be sure to tell you that that's... Oh, that's right. I forgot. You've been here before. Goodbye. Cigarette, anyone?
Thanks, Paul.
There aren't any.
Oh, that's our Jack.
Mm-hmm. Here you are, Bill.
Thank you. Well, hello, everybody.
Oh,
Glad you could come. Everybody comfortable?
Yes, sure.
Good, good.
Cigarette, Jake?
Oh, thank you. Now, the reason I asked you all over here is because I want you to meet Father James Keller, who's coming by in just a few minutes. He wants to talk to you about making a movie. Now, I know that everybody in Hollywood wants to make a movie, but this fellow happens to have a very good idea for one. You see, Father Keller is the head of the Christophers. Now, as some of you may know, the main idea behind this movement is to encourage more good, decent, normal people to take up careers that strongly affect the fate of this country. Like education, government, labor management, and in the fields of writing, like newspapers, books, magazines, motion pictures, radio, and television. Now, I know this is a pretty big order, but the Christopher movement has been sweeping the country. So much so that it has reached a point where Father Keller has been able to cover only a small portion of the invitations for talks on the Christophers. And he thinks that a picture explaining the idea would be a good substitute for a talk.
I think it's a good idea.
I think it's an excellent idea.
Father Keller.
Oh, hello, Father.
Hello, Father.
I suppose Jack told you that the chief purpose of the Christophers is to get more people of high purpose into the vital fields that affect, for better or for worse, the lives of the majority of mankind. The fields of teaching, government, writing, labor, social service, and library work. And Jack mentioned that we were interested in one picture. As a matter of fact, I'd be interested in lots of pictures on the Christopher idea, because I don't know of any medium in which we could reach the millions of people more effectively through the motion pictures. And you seem to have a question.
Well, you know, I suppose it is a good thing to get into one of those fields, but, Father, it's not quite so easy for young people to get any kind of job these days.
Well, that's just the point, Ann. As long as it is difficult, why not try for a job that counts? Instead of just taking something where you're filling in time between 9 and 5, why not get a job where you're doing something, a job with a purpose?
Oh, a job with a purpose, so you can whistle while you work.
Yes, very good, Ann. That's the way to put it. Whistle while you work. But it's really much more than that, too. I'm convinced we're on the brink of the greatest peace the world has ever seen, or the worst disaster.
You make it sound like a matter of life and death, Father.
But, Bill, I really feel it is. Here we are in the greatest country in the world, about the only country left intact. And whether we like it or not, I'm afraid, as America goes, so goes the world.
Why, Father, that's a frightening thought.
Yes, Loretta, but a glorious challenge. It's a wonderful time to be alive. Just think, a little handful of people can change the whole course of history.
Well, maybe more than a handful.
I mean, just that, a handful. 1% is nothing more than a handful. And just think what that 1% has been doing to mess up the world. And they get in the fields that count.
That's right. You never see any of those, pardon me, Father, chaps out at the ball game selling hot dogs. No, you don't.
You're right you are, Paul. They're in there pitching. Call them what you like, they have one thing in common. They hate the basic truth on which our nation is founded, that every human being is a child of God, and that he gets his rights from God, and that the purpose of state is to protect those God-given rights. every one of them get into fields where they can eliminate that truth.
So the purpose of the Christopher movement is to spark enough people to get them into the same fields and work as hard to build as they do to destroy.
Yes, Bill, that's just it. I'm really convinced that we can find enough people who will be fired with the love of God and country, who will gladly get into these vital fields, dedicate their lives, and get into government and teaching and all the rest of these important spheres, and work hard to keep in there that basic truth in which our country is founded. To be for what these other people are against. The number one item is the Declaration of Independence. No, that's not everything, but it's mighty important. I don't think many people realize the close connection that the founders of our country explicitly stated was between God and country. Over and over again, they emphasized that was the cornerstone of our liberty. Then 4 times in the Declaration of Independence, they repeated over and over again that our liberty depends upon God.
That's right.
Do you know the Declaration, Paul?
Naturally. It goes as follows. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bonds which have connected them with another and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them.
Remarkable, Paul. You're one of the first persons I've ever met that know that much of the Declaration. There's something I have here I'd like to show you. Right in the very first sentence of the Declaration, it states very explicitly that all law flows from God. And then there's another reference to God in the very next sentence.
The very next sentence, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights.
Amazing, Paul. And he knows it word for word, too. Here's an odd thing about that second reference to God. It wasn't in the first version at all. It's a straight right-in. Here it is, a photostatic copy of the original draft. The first version said, all men are created equal, and from that equal creation, they derive certain inalienable rights. But apparently they want to emphasize the point still more. So you can see where Jefferson crossed out the phrase, from that equal creation, they derive certain inalienable rights, and wrote in the phrase, they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. Now that's not the only change that was made in the Declaration. When it was submitted to the first Congress, they made several changes, several deletions, but they insisted on only 2 additions, and both those additions were referenced to God, and they're both in the last paragraph.
The last paragraph.
The last paragraph. We, therefore, the representatives of the United States of America in General Congress assembled, appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world.
Very good, Paul. Appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world. That's just the point they want to emphasize. And then again in the last paragraph.
And for the support of this declaration with a firm reliance on divine providence.
Thanks a million, Paul. You were a big help.
No reflection, Paul, but how did you learn all of that?
Yeah, I'd like to know, too.
Well, the teacher used to keep me in after school a lot. I bet I wrote that in the blackboard 5,000 times. I'll say this for the woman, though. She didn't have me writing cat and dog or Paul was a bad boy. She must have a lot of that Christopher purpose we've been talking about.
You know, that 1%'s a cozy group. All they want to do is tear the heart out of the Declaration.
And that's bad enough, Bill, but they're out to do much more than that. They want to destroy the very pursuit of happiness, the whole reason for being, the joy of living that's come down through 20 centuries of Christianity. And for over 3,000 years, the Jews have carried the sublime truth that man is made in the image and likeness of God, that he has an eternal destiny. And all of this stands out ever so much more clearly when you think of what Adolf Hitler and Karl Marx said about their idea of the worth of the human being. Here are Hitler's words. He said, to the Christian doctrine of the infinite significance of the individual human soul, I oppose with icy clarity the saving doctrine of the nothingness and insignificance of the human being. And Karl Marx put it a slightly different way, but his idea was just the same. He said, the democratic concept of man is false because it is Christian. The democratic concept holds that each man is a sovereign being. This is the illusion, dream, and postulate of Christianity.
Then our position is crystal clear, Father. We say man is a creature of God, responsible to God. That 1% say that man is a nobody.
Yes, just a nobody worth about $1.89, just a bunch of chemicals. And they don't want men to know his sacred worth, and that's why they swarm into every field they can to eliminate every trace of man's dignity. They want to wipe it out, eliminate it from the face of the earth.
Well, is it correct to say, then, that the Christophers are an anti-communist movement?
No, the problem as we see it is this. It's getting good people in, getting the good citizen to do his part in saving our country and saving the world. And so, the Christopher approach emphasizes the affirmative, the constructive, doing something positive. We say that it's much more important to chase good people in than is to be too preoccupied chasing evil people out, essential as that is. I don't know how many of you realize it, but according to reliable estimates, 60% of the parents of America don't want their own children to work for their own government. Can you think of any quicker way to wreck any country? Then, on top of that, 1 million teachers are needed in the schools of America. 6,000 little public schools have closed because of lack of teachers. Fewer and fewer parents are encouraging their children to take up writing careers. 17,000 librarians are needed. Tens of thousands in the social service field. I could go on, but it's more or less the same old story of what happened in Germany. Most of the good Germans wanted good government, good education, good everything else. But they didn't want to be bothered. They wanted somebody else to do it. You know the old story, everybody wanted to eat, but nobody wanted to cook.
We know who wound up doing all the cooking.
Yes, Jack, and the world has had indigestion ever since. The Nazis weren't strong in the beginning, but they swarmed into every vital field. The lines were drawn then and the lines are drawn now. We're either for God or against God. If it's the latter, we'll pay the penalty and soon.
William Penn said something along that line about being ruled by tyrants. I remember, he said...
Those who are not governed by God are ruled by tyrants.
Is that what you meant, Irene?
Yes, Father, something like he said was what I meant.
Well, anyhow, that's where the Christopher approach comes in. We feel that something can be done, and soon. As soon as there are more people turning on lights than they're turning them off, there'll be a wonderful change for the better. Just recently, I finished a quick trip around the country. I gave talks in 23 cities, 95 talks, a little over 4 weeks. Every place you go, you find wonderful people, all ready and set to do something to change the world for the better.
Yes, Father, the woods are full of good people. Now all we have to do is get them out of the woods.
Father, you mentioned that you had been all over the country and you met some very fine people. Could you give us an example, for instance, of some constructive thing that has been done?
I certainly can, Loretta. I can give you hundreds of them. But here's one that I think will interest you in particular. I was down in Texas not long ago, and I met this 23-year-old Baptist school teacher. She said she'd read an article about the Christophers in a magazine. And the point that she liked best was its emphasis on what little people can do to change the world for the better. She said, and it was wonderful to hear the way she said it, she said, you know, for the first time in my life did I realize a little person like myself counts. And then she went on to explain that she was teaching in schools. It was hard work and so forth. But she said, most of the girls I know are getting out of the teaching field. They say there's not enough money in it. The pay is too low.
Well, after all, Father, they do have a point. They don't make very much money, do they?
That's right.
Well, there's something in
Father,
that.
is it even a living wage?
Well, I think for most it is, Loretta. It's a living wage, but for many not. And that's part of our job, to get a better wage for them, too. But this girl had a very fine solution for the present. She said she was going to stay in there teaching, And moreover, and this was the important point, she said, I'm going to become a committee of one and get as many girls as I can to get into the teaching field. It was wonderful to hear her enthusiasm. And then she said, I got my first recruit yesterday.
Father, tell them one about the young fellow in the gas station.
Oh, yes, there's a nice point to that story, Jack. This young Negro student was working his way through college, trying to support his family. He had a job at a filling station. A little bit of prejudice developed, and about 10 or 12 people stopped buying gasoline. The man, or the owner of the station, was quite worried. It was only a small business that he had, and he felt that he had let the man go. Word got around, and this little housewife heard about it, and she felt she should do something. She'd caught this Christopher idea. She should reach out to the world, and here was a specific opportunity. So in a very nice way, she walked down to the station and asked if there was anything she could do. And this man was so surprised. He said, well, you're the first one that's offered to do anything. Everybody's complaining. Nobody's doing anything. But she said, how many customers would you lose if you kept him? Well, he said, I don't know, about 20 maybe. She said, if I go out and get you 20 new customers, will you keep them? He said, I certainly will. She went out and got 25 new customers. One of the big magazines picked up the story and carried it to at least 15 million readers. I dare say that maybe 1 million people have done things through her example. She wanted to reach the world. Well, she did reach the world.
Father, I read a story in Reader's Digest about that Russian school teacher, Madame Kosenkina, wasn't that her name? Now, wasn't that in some way connected with the Christophers?
I think that's an ideal story to illustrate what one little person can do. Some time ago, I talked with a young couple who live on a farm in Connecticut about the Christopher idea. This young couple have a wonderful farm, 6 children, and 64 cows. And when I talked about the Christophers to this lady, she said, listen, we got enough to do right here. And furthermore, we're buried off here in the middle of Connecticut. And I said to her, I said, well, I don't care whether you're buried in the middle of Alaska. You can still do something to help the world. The world needs people like you. Well, I thought I'd hear nothing about it. 6 months later, she was sitting at breakfast with her husband and read in the morning paper about this Madame Kosenkina, the Russian school teacher who'd been taken a prisoner. I imagine 100 million people read about it and said, isn't that too bad? And then turned to the want ads or something like that. You know the old story. She turned to her husband. She says, Dan, we can't allow a thing like this to happen in our country. Let's do something about it. He said, fine, I'm with you. Her brother, a young lawyer, came up from New York for a quiet weekend. No sooner does he get in the house than Louise goes right at him. She says, Peter, we must do something to help that poor school teacher. He wants to get out of it. He says, forget it. After all, it's not our business. And she turns to him, she says, it isn't our business? If it isn't our business, whose business is it? Well, he was sparked. He went right through with it. He got a group in New York to help him obtain a subpoena. He carried it himself over to the Russian consulate. He stood across the street wondering how he would ever get in the hands of the Russian consul general. He was standing there hoping and praying for something to happen. Something did happen. Up drove the Russian consul general, steps out of his car, hurries up to the front door, and fortunately left his key inside. And he rang the bell. Meanwhile, Pete saw what was happening. He rushes across the street, and it was quite a job, but he got the subpoena in the hands of the Russian consul general. Well, everything began to happen. The word of this went all over the world by radio. And by a strange course of events, it went right into the room on the 3rd floor of the Russian consulate, where there had been a radio left by accident, and here, seated, a prisoner, was this Russian school teacher. She told us afterwards that when she heard her name over the radio, when she looked out and saw hundreds of people milling around outside, she came to just one conclusion. Somebody in America was fighting for her. She didn't know who it was, but it thrilled her so much she just wanted to jump into America. But that, how could she do that? She went to the window, and as she looked out, here she was on the 3rd floor. But that wouldn't stop her. Nothing was going to stop her if she could just save her life. Anything. She saw a wire stretched across the courtyard. She felt if she could only hit that, it might break her fall and save her. She jumped. She nearly tore off her hand, but it broke her fall, and she was very seriously injured. It took her months to recover. But when she did recover, she had only one request, and that was to see the one person who had thought out into the world to help a little person like her.
Oh, Father, that's a marvelous story, and that's what the Christophers can do, huh?
I could tell you thousands of stories like these. Each one emphasizes over and over again the big things that little people can do. I'm convinced that God will bless any old fool who will try. I don't think he'll bless the smartest person in the world who says it can't be done. You know, our forefathers left us a wonderful pattern, a heritage we should cherish. Each one of us can play a part in preserving it. Yes, you and you and you and everybody else can do something to change the world for the better.
Father, you have a customer.
You can count on me too, Father.
I'm in. I think I can speak for everybody.
Why not? You've been doing it all evening.
Oh, Irene. Father, I think what Paul means is that you don't have to take a vote. You can have a boost from all of us here. Because I really believe that everybody here is thrilled with the idea that all over the country there are people simple enough and wise enough to know that if you don't belong to the human family, you don't belong to anything. Well, in other words, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything.
That's right, Loretta. Very true.
Father Keller, there's a couple of songwriters here wrote a song they thought maybe you could use. Their names are Johnny Burke and Jimmy Van Heusen. You remember them? They wrote that song, Would You Rather Swing on a Star, Carry Moonbeams Home in a Jar, Johnny Burke and Jimmy Van Heusen.
Hello, Father.
Hello, Johnny, Jimmy.
Hello,
Jack?
Father.
Oh, yes. They brought a fellow along with them that said he'd like to sing it. Claims he's a baritone. I didn't get his last name, but his first name is Bing.
Oh, hello, Father.
Hello, Bing.
Well, a lot of major league talent you have here, huh? Well, good evening, Father.
Good evening, Bing.
Hi,
Welcome to
Jack.
come.
Hello, Bing.
Say, Jack, the boys here have written a song that they think more or less suits Father Keller's purpose.
Oh, then you know his work.
Oh, certainly.
Good, good. Say, did Father Keller tell you about the Declaration of Independence and the pains our forefathers went to in writing this beautiful document?
Yes, he did, Jack. In fact, that was sort of the inspiration for the song. I hope it fits, Father. In any case, here it is. The dream I'm building is early American. Something that won't go out of style. It makes you feel that life's worth living the way they must have felt that first Thanksgiving. You sure get sold on that early American after you look around a while. So I'm building a dream for someone who likes early American. The dream I'm building is early American. Something that won't go out of style. It makes you feel that life's worth living the way they must have felt that first Thanksgiving. You sure get sold on this early American after you look around a while. likes early American.
Think it works? I think it's wonderful.
Thank you,
Really
boys.
swell.
God bless you.
Thank you, Father.
Marvelous.
Oh, here's a telegram for you, Father Keller.
Oh, Rochester, thank you. Would you mind holding this, please?
Not at all.
Oh, it's from Bob Hope. He wants me to phone him.
Bob?
Yeah.
Oh, I'll get him for you. I'll get him on the phone. See, he lives right over here in North Hollywood. It's no distance at all, you know.
Maybe, but that telegram says from Houston, Texas.
Father, don't you think it'd be better to send Bob, write him a letter? You see, sometimes the written word, you can get so much more out of it, you know?
Yeah, I know how you feel,
Yeah.
Jack, but Bob says phone him and right away. If
Phone
it makes
him.
any difference, I'll be glad to.
Oh, now, wait a minute. No. Now, Father, please, no. Certainly not. I'll get him on the phone for you. Yeah. What's the number?
Jackson 4219. Houston, Texas.
I know about Houston. I know. Oh, operator, I'd like to get Mr. Bob Hope, please, in Houston, Texas. Yeah, the number is Jackson 4219.
Gee, Jack, I hate to put you to this expense.
Oh, listen, Father, let me explain something to you. Believe me, on the radio, I'm supposed to be a real cheap, stingy character, you see, but that's only to get laughs, that's all. You have to get laughs, but don't confuse that with the real me, because in real life, I'm not like that at all, you know. Certainly not. Here he is, Father. I'm all right.
Hello, Bob. How are you? How is it down there? Fine. I hope to get down there myself in a few weeks. How's the weather?
You asked him that already.
Sure. Fine. Did Dolores go with you?
Father, ask him what he wants.
Bob, I'm at Jack's. Can you make it snappy?
Yes, Father? Uh-huh. I can hardly hear you. Well, I have a little... Yeah. Will you wait till I turn this Crosby record off? Just... Hey, fellas, will you pipe down? Will you? I'm talking long distance to Hollywood. Will you? It's expensive. How can I explain it to you? Jack Benny's paying for it. Father, I just saw a miracle. Must be radio fans. Hey, Father, I'm sorry I wasn't at Jack Benny's house for the meeting. But I just want you to know I'm behind this project for the Christophers. Well, it seems like a good idea to me, getting the people back to the basic idea behind the Declaration of Independence. Yeah, you couldn't push a better product. Seems to me you don't hear much anymore about the Declaration. All you hear about is the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. But let's not forget for a moment that they don't add up to much if you pass up the Declaration. Yeah, and I'm sure there's a lot of folks here in Texas will be behind you. It's just their dish. Good luck, Father.
Thanks a lot. I'll be seeing you. Bye-bye. Jack, I can't begin to thank you for this. It's marvelous.
Don't thank me, Father. I want to thank you for the chance to help out on an idea as important as this. And of all the things you mentioned, the one that stands out in my mind is the part about the Declaration of Independence.
Jack, it stood out in somebody else's mind, too. I wanted to tell the rest about it, but I didn't dare take any more of their time. I have a copy here of Lincoln's lost speech. If I may, I'd leave it with you.
Well,
Notice his magnificent language. Just read a bit of that.
1858. This was their lofty and wise and noble understanding of the justice of the Creator to his creatures, to the whole great family of man. In their enlightened belief, nothing stamped with the divine image and likeness was sent into the world to be trodden on and degraded and embruted by its fellows. Now, my countrymen, if you have been taught doctrines which conflict with the great landmarks of the Declaration of Independence, if you have listened to suggestions which would take from its grandeur and mutilate the symmetry of its proportions, if you have been inclined to believe that all men are not created equal in those inalienable rights enumerated by our Charter of Liberty, let me entreat you to come back. Return to the fountains whose waters spring close by the blood of the Revolution. Think nothing of me. Take no thought for the political fate of any man whomsoever, but come back to the truths that are in the Declaration of Independence. Do not destroy the immortal emblem of humanity, the Declaration of Independence.
God bless you, Jack. God bless you too, Rochester.
Thank you.